Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to TRTM for our third and final round of coverage for today, but it is the third and penultimate round of Race Club UK's Shooting Stars Cup. As always, I'm Regan Clark. You join us here on our penultimate visit to this four-part championship here on the outskirts of West Kingsdown in Kent, at a real jewel in the crown of British motorsports here at the historic Brands Hatch circuit. Founded in 1950, in the same year as another iconic British venue, the Grand Prix Circuit Silverstone, this one is comprised of 9 turns and 2.4 miles of FIA Grade 2. Largely in part, this layout emerged in 1976, would be later improved on for over 5 decades now to bring us into where we are today. It is a fantastic little circuit indeed. Sees racing on the international stage and even on the intercontinental stage in some variety. We're seeing racing out of the GT World Challenge Europe and NASCAR Euro Series calendars from 2014 and 2012 respectively to the current day. In terms of local motorsports, what doesn't compete here at Brands Hatch? Including but not limited to British Superbikes, British Touring Cars, British GT, TCR UK, F4's British Championship, and taking a look at even more of the events that run out of this circuit. You have for example, in here, Brands Britannia, Masters Racing Legends at the Masters Historic Festival, Ferrari Challenge UK, British Supersport Championship, Moto4's British Cup. Anything that is a British championship, like Donington Park, will inevitably end up here at Brands Hatch. They are 2 cornerstones of the British motorsports industry. Fantastic venues in their own respect, and for this round, we'll lay waste to the penultimate setting of this championship. And it's going to be an interesting one coming away from what has been so far 2 exciting rounds of this series that has seen back-to-back wins from a driver's point of view from VSR's Fate Galaxy and Carlos Diesch, the Austrian and Swiss talents, bringing home victories at the front of the field. But this is a team sport, by the way. This is an interleague championship, so taking a look into the championship standings and where they're concerned, VSR have fallen now to 3rd, only some 30 points away from Simplay, who now take up 2nd. It's Race Club UK to still hold all the cards at the table here after round 2 of the championship with 5,290 points in the championship. They far and away lead here and could very well wrap up tonight's proceedings on the team's championship right here and now in Kent, here at the Brands Hatch circuit. Taking a look into the regulations for today, they're much the same as what we've had over the last 2 rounds. We're in the midst of the last 10 minutes of free practice. Coming up around the corner is 15 minutes of qualifying and 90 minutes of racing, of which has 2 mandatory pit stops for both fuel and tyres. In the nature of why this event exists, well, it's a charity event for those of you just joining us now for this round of the championship. And about the charity that this is all for, the Shooting Stars Cup is proudly run in support of the Shooting Stars Children's Hospice Service. It's a specialist service that provides specialist care and support to families who have a baby, child or young person with a life-limiting condition or whose child has died. Their purpose is simple yet powerful: to help every family make every moment count. They operate across Surrey and London, and their teams support families from diagnosis through end-of-life care and throughout bereavement. It costs around £12 million each year to provide this necessary vital care, and with only 29% of funding coming from the government itself, they rely heavily on fundraising and community support. Crucially, 82 pence of every pound raised goes directly to caring for children and supporting their families. If you're tuning in on Twitch, you'll see in the Twitch chat just posted now is a link to the Just Giving page in support of this series. So far, we're 75% of our way to the goal of raising £1,000 for this charity over the course of this championship. If you're watching on the YouTube release, you'll find it in the video description. Getting a look back onto the regs then, before we take a look back onto the field right now. Closing in on what is actually now the last 5 minutes of free practice, we go back on board here with one of the newest additions to the Race Club lineup, and this could absolutely bring them in to the sort of winning positions overall on track. When front rows have been locked out by VSR talent before, Will Friedman joins the fray, and this is a driver that needs little introduction. Very experienced behind the wheel with the 208, maybe not so experienced from the pit lane just a moment ago, but a driver that has quite a bit of backing behind him. One of the mainstay members of the exclusive esports team at the time of recording. This one is a serious ace on track. Keep a close eye on the performance out of that 208 today, as this is the Hail Mary solution for the Race Club UK lineup. You'll have to forgive a few stammers here and there. We're on our third broadcast today. It's been a long one here, having covered races from as far back as 2 in the afternoon today from folks over at HCCL, and then we just wrapped up about 30 minutes ago with coverage of the Competizione Performance League World Series. We see here with Steve McMillan on his way down through to turn 4, the Graham Hill Bend. We'll get a full tour of the track over the course of qualifying, but before we get into that, taking a look around the field to see drivers out on track at the moment. Team VSR's Kieran Rodd joins the field in the number 61, and let's get on to the discussion of balance of performance. And it's an extensive list to break down here before the end of free practice. Starting things off, the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo loses 27 kilos. Ford on screen at the moment with the 7th generation Ford Performance Mustang GT3 will lose 21 kilos, making them second lightest in class, albeit at the cost of a 19% engine restrictor. If we can really get the words out today, really struggling here. And that will give them in and around the ballpark of about 440 to 450 brake horsepower coming into this round. That's over the 550 they make from the factory. Nissan loses 15 kilos with Bentley losing 14, Honda losing 11 with Mercedes losing 5, Ferrari loses 3 kilos, and Porsche, the last of the weight losses here, 2 kilos off of the 992 GT3R. Into weight gains then, and Aston Martin will see 6 kilos on board of the V8 Vantage, BMW with 11 kilos on board, Lamborghini with 16 kilos on board, McLaren on the short end of the stick here at a home race for McLaren with 29 kilos onto the 720S under balance of performance regulations for today. Taking a look at the timing charts here as we come up towards the end of today's session, it's Simplay Motorsport that have Race Club UK at the end of free practice here pitched by a measly 5 thousandths of a second. Now, we're no stranger to a close qualifying session, which we'll hopefully see around the corner. If you watched earlier on with us today on our coverage of the World Series by Competizione Performance League, you'll have seen pole position wrapped up by 53 thousandths of a second. So to see free practice get even closer to that, it's going to be an interesting thing to see. We see that not only is Friedman struggling in the pit lane, it's definitely going to be a case there where a lot of drivers are struggling for that run into the pit lane. So taking a look at the running order of things, Simplay fastest at the end of free practice, but you can see the bulk of that top 10 features plenty of Race Club cars. Will Friedman, James Burns, we see further down the line as well, also with Race Club Ben Godden in 7th place. We see one of the new additions to the lineup alongside that of Will Friedman is Gregory Bellamattina in the number 919. We see Richard Hall at the back end of that top 10 for Race Club UK. Elsewhere in that top 10, though, we see Cas van Velzen with Team VSR. Now, Van Velzen in his last appearance to an Interleague series, I believe, outside of this one, has been a case where we saw him take the win at the League v League v League Silverstone round. That was hosted by Race Club UK in their fight between themselves and Simplay Motorsports and VSR. That in which he won in his time with Nissan. So the move to Lamborghini is a curious one here for Van Velzen. We'll see what he can do over the course here of Brands Hatch. We also see Ian McGowan on the grid today, a driver we've seen plenty of times in a few different series. Now on the grid also is Chris Davies for Team VSR. We see Wright, who we were just on with a moment ago, who was a race winner in the World Series last week and came home to a solid result, albeit one that stifled under the changes to regulations this week for him. Still had a great race throughout in his fight with Brooklyn Donkin of Euro Titans Endurance. That was at the trailing end of their last round, just gone at the Red Bull Ring. That'll be live and available on YouTube, hopefully by the end of the week. Can't make any guarantees on that. Depends on how long it takes to upload. As we come to the end of this session then, Race Club UK take, as it would stand, 2 of the 5 fastest times, courtesy of Friedman and Burns. Burns looking really fired up for this round as well. The Honda looking very spry here at Brands Hatch. It's going to be curious to see Honda, being such a rare manufacturer on this grid, having a solid position on this field to go toe-to-toe with cars that are more commonly sighted around the field, like the Mustang, like the McLaren, and even maybe at a push like the Lamborghini. It's going to be a curious one to see, because this is a car that has, for the greater part, slipped between the cracks of time. And down across the line goes Burns, stays 3rd fastest. With only 35 seconds left to go then in free practice, we're short onto the discussion of 15 minutes of qualifying. Sadly, no qualifying predictions for the run in towards today, so we're heading into this one blind. Just getting a look here, right from Bellamattina to Hall, 5 thousandths across 3 cars. Absolutely bonkers level stuff we're seeing here. Of course, the elephant in the room is still that 5 thousandth of a second gap. We see plenty of people joining us in chat there. Skino, Sealander Has, and Will Friedman all in the chat. Good evening to you as well. Best of luck to some of you competing in today's race, of course. And it's going to be curious to see how Friedman gets on his time here with Race Club UK. Really the ace in the hole for the Race Club lineup. They're still looking for an outright race win. The last two going to VSR, courtesy of Fate Galaxy and Carlos Dish. We've seen Friedman has tangled with those two over on VSR before, and he is definitely quite an experienced customer when it comes to these two drivers. And right now, as it would appear in having a glance around the field, their absence, this could be a rather curious case here for that 208. More to discuss though when we get into the track tour over the course of qualifying just around the corner. Nearest to the line, I believe, is the 313 and the 61. So that currently stands to be that of Gary Leach with Simplay Motorsports, and also with the 61, that would be Kieran Rod with Team VSR. Rod, of course, was the VSR Season 9 champion in the very bizarre Porsche Cup era. He's seen him recently make his way back onto the field, albeit with BMW now. We get to see him drive one of his older choices of machinery. Well, I say older in the sense that he's not used it in a while, not that the vehicle itself is old, of course not. Only 2 years old, that Ford Mustang, introduced in 2024. So, into the topic of qualifying then. 15 minutes of qualifying underway. You can see a scramble out of the paddock there. I believe first among the fray appeared to be Ian McGowan. So we'll go and catch on board here with Simplay Motorsports number 664. Behind him is Burns, Wright and Bella Machina to make the top 4 drivers out onto the track as we make our way down through Paddock Hill Bend. Arguably the most iconic section of British racetrack. Making our way out through Druids then. Following on board then with the Simplay number 664, running his more natural colours, so not actually running the team colours this time around, is Ian McGowan. And this is a colour scheme we've been seeing over the course of the last couple of weeks here from McGowan. On his way up and around the run of things at Surtees, right behind him then Burns in the 420 Honda. It's going to be curious to see what these two can produce over the course of this first set of flying laps. 15 minutes, of course, between now and the start of the race. You can already see there Burns starting to leave a bit of a gap open for McGowan. He doesn't want to be pressed up to the back end of that McLaren over the course of his first flying lap. So out through towards the Sheen curve here on the run up towards Sector 3. We'll stay on board with McGowan for our tour of the track then. A wonderful, wonderful circuit, Brands Hatch. One of 3 circuits I've ever personally visited, and it is a brilliant place to be. Albeit a bit of a trek to get out there. Nonetheless, out through Clark Curve at turn 9. On board then with Ian McGowan for the first of the flying laps here in qualifying for round 3 of the Shooting Stars Cup by Race Club UK. Beginning our run then almost immediately into the most iconic section of British racetrack, down through Paddock Hill Bend. Turn 1, that drop downhill gives us an immediate run back uphill, up towards turn 2 here at Druids. Then on the run down through Graham Hill into Graham Hill Bend here at turn 3 of the track as we make our way onto the Cooper Straight. Coming up and around into turn 4 at Surtees as we enter the Grand Prix section. You can see where the track curves round to the right. That would be the Indy layout, which is often used in the British Touring Car Championship. Up and around then Surtees on the run into the Grand Prix section. First introduced as far back as the 1960s, was later improved upon in the 1970s, with the current layout of the track best replicated in 1976. Out through the run of things at Hawthorns onto the Derek Minter Straight in towards Westfield. Down through the Dingle Dell up towards another very iconic section, one that we've seen often compared in other track designs. This is the blind uphill right-hander that is the Sheen curve. Very difficult section to master, but one that is very satisfying, very rewarding for these drivers as well. On the way out through Stirlings, up towards Clearways as we rejoin the Indy circuit in towards the Clark curve. So far so good then for McGowan on his way down towards the line. We'll see the first of his times roll in over the course of this session. Down across the line goes Ian McGowan, 1:24.425 as we see the times roll in thick and fast. Burns in second. Then we see Ian Skeen go fastest for VSR. He'll prove to be a very vital asset in preserving VSR's winning record on track. We see there Matthias Claes goes fastest in the 4:42. He was the fastest at the end of free practice. And it was up over the 2:08 at the time, who we see is in a spot of bother there for Will Friedman on the run out of turn 3. Meanwhile, Cas van Velzen goes fastest for VSR. Now some 377 thousandths over Claes. Number 18 across the line a moment ago. That was the case for, looking here, Team ARL's Ferrari 488. This is with Bacala. We had a bit of trouble there on his way, just getting back down onto the track. He now falls down to 12th place with more times rolling in. The 313 most recent among them there for Leach as he crosses the line. Gary Leach now 9th place on this grid. Nearest to the line a moment ago was the 64. Across the line went that of David Bender. Goes 13th with Aston Martin. So we go back on board for the 95 here, trying to locate the nearest driver to the line, Ben Godden with Race Club UK. Behind him, the number 87. Across the line then goes Godden to 10th. The 87 across the line from behind him there. Nick Lamming goes into 12th place. Meanwhile, we start to see some improvements there. Dead on level with the fastest time is Ian McGowan to Cas van Velzen at the front of the field. That's the second time this has happened today. I want to point out, in our last coverage of the Competizione Performance League World Series, we had much the same situation play out up until the gap was opened up to 53 thousandths. We had the two fastest cars separated by nothing. So this is quite a bizarre thing. If I had a penny for every time that's happened, I'd have 2 pennies. Maybe 3 if we remember back to VSR and they're running at Donington. Very bizarre that it's happened more than one time, let alone twice on the same day. McGowan then level on time with Van Velzen. 123.815 to beat. It's 2 positions for the price of 1 for any who dare. Number 28 across the line a moment ago. Looking around the order to locate them at this time, as it's an extensive list of drivers. It's Chris Davies to go 13th. Nearest to the line is the number 64. Looking on board here to find with David Bender with Aston Martin, Team ARL. Behind him, the number 81 to the line. I believe, yes, that was the 81, not the 61. So I am not going fully blind just yet. That was for Alonso Amador with Team ARL. Across the line then the 95. Following in their trails, also among the pack of cars here is the 208. So we'll be seeing if Will Friedman can do it. We see Ian McGowan goes fastest, then Will Friedman follows. So McGowan breaks the tie off of Cas van Velzen by 0.4 of a second. Friedman joins up on the front row with Race Club UK. That's 3 different teams on the podium right now, with Simplay, Race Club and Team VSR. Just under 9 minutes left to go. We can see they're stranded in the washout of turn 3. Now back into the paddock was Ian McGowan after taking the new fastest time of the session. We see only 100th off of Cas van Velzen is Roel Hermsen with Audi. So all V10 there on that second row. We see Matthias Claes now makes that a different story, going up to second fastest. Simplay on a front row lockout with McLaren. That pushes Ford and Will Friedman with Race Club UK down to third. Cas van Velzen to the back of the second row as things would stand, and Roel Hermsen to the back of the top 5. In terms of closest gaps, 200ths of a second exist there between that of Burns and Hall, the 2 teammates at Race Club UK fighting as it would stand for 7th. Nearest to the line, number 64. Looking to go and locate here, Team ARL's Aston Martin. David Bender across the line, stays 21st in the session. Number 81 and number 95 approaching the line. So we catch on board here with a trailing of 2. On with Ben Godden from 14th on the field across the line and stays there as it would be. The 208 is nearest. So here comes Will Friedman on his drive for Race Club UK. Across the line, stays in 3rd. From behind him there was the number 696, Ian Skeen. We also see Gregory Bellamacina goes 4th, and now Tyler Vermaak goes fastest on his move to McLaren. Team VSR back on leading form as they're really bringing their A-game into this round. Ian Skeen, Cas van Velzen, Tyler Vermaak. They've got 3 very solid drivers under their wing there, and even more to follow when you consider other drivers like Kieran Rodd, Chris Davies. The list goes on. But it really does seem to be the case as well. Simplay's brought their A-game with McGowan and Claes. Race Club UK's not playing around anymore. The gloves have come off here for Friedman and Bellamacina, the 2 leading Race Club UK cars. Close behind then, backing them up, Hermsen, Burns and Hall from 7th through 9th. We see now Vermaak up and ahead of McGowan by only 3 thousandths, and as he rounds Clark Curve, it is a minuscule time frame to conquer. Can McGowan do it across the line? Not this time around, but he still has plenty of time. Down through to turn 1 at Paddock Hill Bend. This will be arguably one of the most feared opening sections of a track we've ever seen in GT racing. I'd say the only other I would consider to be on the same level is the Variante Rettifilo down at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. This has an even, I would even go as far to suggest, as fearsome, if not more so fearsome, turn one, because you are at the mercy of not only your fellow man and machine, but gravity itself as you drop down through turn one at Paddock Hill Bend. More drivers down to the line then. The 74 across the line a moment ago, and we did see an improvement for position there for that of Chris Leish. With Race Club UK goes into 12th fastest, 43 thousandths off of Ian Skeen in 11th place. Super close there in that top five when you have 5 cars separate front to back by 358 thousandths, 4 of which are less than 2/10 apart, 2 of which are less than 100th apart, is remarkable. 540 nearest to the line, the 540 then of Wright. We saw him not long ago then compete with Lexus, and it's a bit of a culture shock for him to jump out of the RCF and into the Huracan, but he goes up to 13th, so he's taking it in his stride on his run down through the Paddock Hill Bend. Up to 13th place goes Wright in the 540. Nearest the line, number 95. We did see a few drivers across the line beforehand. That was the case for the 664 and the 61. So in the case there of Ian McGowan, still yet to have conquered that 3,000th of a second gap. We see for Ben Godden up to the top 10 with 5 minutes left to go. Number 208 nearest the line. Here comes Will Friedman, still within a 10th. The 888 coming to the line. Can Vermaak open up the taps here over his original fastest? Not on this lap, so it appears. Still a 1:23.412 for the 888. 4:20 across the line. That'll be for James Burns. Gotta hand it here to the Honda. It is a surprisingly competitive offering here on today's grid. I don't think many. Oh my goodness, I've only just seen that now. Cas van Velzen, fastest in the last lap just gone. Now up over Tyler Vermaak by 100th of a second. We now have 3 cars, and I want to point this out. This is by and large one of the closest qualifyings we've seen, because in the last round we just covered of the World Series, we had 2 drivers within 53 thousandths at the front of the field. Now we have 3 at the front of the field by less than that mark, by 13 thousandths of a second. I want to clarify, when you go and take this into a real-world consideration, the amount of time it often takes you to react is anywhere between 110 and 140 milliseconds. That's 140 thousandths of a second otherwise. And how long it takes you often to blink can be upwards of 110 thousandths. So we are really in a range here where if you stacked these 3 end on end, and now with the introduction here of Will Friedman fastest, we have 4 cars in a range where you'd blink and miss all of them. Absolutely unbelievable. In the trailing end of this championship, all teams bringing their A game here. VSR, Race Club and Simplay all duking it out within a 10th at the front. You can't write a qualifying this close. It is absolutely bizarre. Chris Leish recently then to 6th place. Not to be overshadowed by the elephant in the room that is that top 4, arguably the closest top 4 we've ever seen. 32 thousandths between the leading pair, a single 100th between second and third, and 3 thousandths between third and fourth. All in all, it's 45 thousandths of a second front to back. All of which, 4 cars in all, compressed to within less than half a tenth of a second. It is infinitesimally small, this gap. Unfathomable to process with the human mind. Had it not been for the timing equipment or any kind of advanced imagery, back in the day, these 4 would have finished level. Across the line, Friedman, still fastest in the session. 1:23.370, 2 minutes left to go here in Brands Hatch. On what has been an absolute showstopper qualifying here amongst these top 4 and across the wider grid in this series. Down to the line goes the 420. You see there from Burns, now up to 6th, joins up and ahead of Leish. Getting closer to joining up in the top 5, as a matter of fact. Is not too far off a shout there of Matthias Claes in 5th. 74 across the line a moment ago. Leish unable to regain that 6th place off of his teammate, James Burns. 1.5 minutes left to go. The 44 across the line a moment ago as well. That'll prove to be the case for Konstantinos Chitos for Race Club UK. He's 20th in the session thus far. 5:40 nearest to the line, so right on his way down. The 10 behind him, Nico Prince. We have Team ARL behind him. I believe there was the 696. Yes, that was Ian Skeen, 13th in the session. Number 61 nearby to the line. So here comes Kieran Rod. Behind him, the 664 and the 413. We see among them was Ian McGowan, the 664, but couldn't find any grounds for an improvement over his personal best. And when you take a look at how fine the gaps are up in that top 4, it would take a sneeze to put him on pole position at this rate. The 314 is in the wall, so I believe that is the end of the session at large for looking there. Cas van Veltzen throws in the towel on what is the closest top 4. In fact, I'd say even as far to go as the closest top 5 we've ever seen across any series here on TRTN. Matthias Claes across the line. Stays in 5th. He's got one more shot at this. Across the line a moment ago there went the number 95, Ben Godden in 11th. Number 44 is nearest to the line. That'll be for Konstantinos Chitos with Race Club UK. Behind him, the triple, looking there, 888 across the line. And that'll be the case for Tyler Vermaak. Needs 42,000 for pole position. Across the line he goes. One more lap, one more shot at this. Number 540 nearest to the line. At the end of qualifying. Across the line then goes right from 15th on the field to 13th. And behind him, Nico Prince. And then across the line a moment ago there, the number 5, Roll Hermsen. Number 87's nearby, but it appears invalid for Lamming, so back into the pit lane he goes. We'll start this session in 17th place. Number 442 still lapping and out on the track at the moment. Matthias Claes in 5th place with Simplay. Up and around Sheen Curve. Looks very confident so far here for the McLaren. McLaren comprising 3 of the 5 top 5 positions there. Out through the run of things at Stirling's. Down to the line goes Matthias Claes. Can he get up into that top 4? The ultra thin margin that comprises the top 5 across the line. Sadly, not on this occasion, but will still be in the top 5 for the race start. The number 74 is nearest to the line. We'll see them down to the line as they actually know. Sadly, coming to the pit, so Chris Leish for 7th. What a qualifying session, though. I don't think we've ever seen a top 4 this close, ever. Full stop. In our time covering events, and we've been covering events for years now here on TRTN, never before has there been a grid this closely packed. That top 4, less than half a tenth of a second. I still cannot wrap my head around that, just how close the margins are. This is going to create, likely, on the second to last set piece of this series, one of its greatest performances. 3 teams in all there. Race Club UK, Team VSR and Simplay inside of that top 4 and in the wider top 5 as well. We'll get a full look through the grid in a moment's time then. But to remind you at the end of this qualifying session of what we're up against in for this round and also what these races and this series by proxy is all for. We take a look here to see coming out of 15 minutes of qualifying into 90 minutes of racing just around the corner here for round 3 of the championship with 2 mandatory pit stops for both fuel and tyres. And again, to remind you as to what this series is all about, the Shooting Stars Cup is proudly run in support of charity. We warmly welcome a voluntary donation from each participating driver. A recommended donation of £10 can be made directly via the official Just Giving page. Shooting Stars Children's Hospices provide specialist care and support to families who have a baby, child or young person with a life-limiting condition or whose child has died. Their purpose is simple but powerful: to help every family make every moment count. For those of you tuning in on the Twitch chat, you can see there the Just Giving link. Again, to remind you, we're 75% of the way to the donation goal of £1,000, currently having raised £753 so far via 34 supporters. The current goal is 1,000, as mentioned before, and every 82p of every pound raised goes directly towards caring for children and supporting families via this wonderful service, the vital care that they provide. So, back into the scope of the grid as we wait for it to form up here, trailing off the back of this series' closest qualifying, and I would go as far to say one of the closest qualifyings we have ever seen here on TRTN. Many drivers then piled into this series. Teams putting their best foot forward here for this championship. In terms of where the next round will go, on May 16th, we'll be taking this to the season finale over at Bathurst in New South Wales, Australia, on the Mount Panorama circuit. Taking a look into the grid then here for round 3 of the Shooting Stars Cup by Race Club UK here at Brands Hatch. Taking a look into it then, Will Friedman on pole position with Cas van Velzen in second. Tyler Vermaak in third with Ian McGowan in fourth. Those four divided by less than half a tenth of a second at the end of qualifying. Matthias Claes by less than 2/10 at the end of quali. He makes 5th place up and ahead of James Burns in 6th. Chris Leish in 7th with Gregory Bellamacina in 8th. Roel Hermsen in 9th and Richard Hall in 10th. Ben Godden in 11th with Chris Davies in 12th. Wright in 13th with Ian Skeen in 14th. Kieran Rodd in 15th. Gary Leach in 16th. Nick Lamming in 17th. Nico Prince in 18th. Mark Sedgwick in 19th, and Konstantinos Chitos in 20th. Alonso Amador in 21st, David Bender in 22nd, David Bacala in 23rd, with Alastair Cummins in 24th, Brett Butler in 25th, with the Jackal 26th, Steve McMillan in 27th. So taking a look onto this grid then of the leading driver of every which team, Race Club UK's fastest driver on this grid, Will Friedman. Team VSR, it's a close pick here between Cas van Velzen and Tyler Vermaak, but van Velzen just eked out Vermaak for the position on track at the end of qualifying. Fastest of the drivers from Simplay Motorsports, Ian McGowan, and then fastest for Team ARL is Wright down in 13th place. Getting a look then on the major overtaking spots. We'll take you through them as we take ourselves onto the track tour here at Brands Hatch in just a moment's time. On the slow crawl through the formation lap here at round 3. Just a moment from now, we'll be catching on board with Will Friedman with Race Club UK. So far in this championship, it's worth pointing out that Ford has taken 100% of the race wins as a manufacturer, from both Fake Galaxy and from Carlos Disch of Team VSR, both of which were driving for Ford. And now we see a Ford headlining the field here, courtesy of the 208 Race Club UK Mustang of Will Friedman, one of their latest signings, alongside Gregory Bellamacina to the lineup for round 3. We wait then for Friedman to take us away on the formation lap. 27 cars in all on this track today. Rolling down through Paddock Hill Bend then on the formation lap. Our major overtaking spots then are going to be down here at Druids on the run in through turn 2, and then on the exit of turn 2 into turn 3, where it's even easier thereafter to follow through on the run through the Graham Hill Bend. Another overtaking opportunity, though a little bit more situational than the last two, is going to be up here also at Surtees. It's what makes this track such a popular destination. There's plenty of overtaking opportunities without compromising on a fun track feeling, and this is owing to its historic nature. This track doesn't deviate too greatly from its original design, albeit there have been changes throughout the years to make the track safer and more accessible for various different series. But at its core, when Brands Hatch was first introduced as its Grand Prix layout, it originally started on just the Indy course layout as we now know it today. But taking a look throughout the layout history of this circuit, the Grand Prix variation of Brands Hatch emerged first in 1960. It would later be improved upon in 1975 with a tighter first sector, where originally it was a case where coming around Druids into what would be now the Graham Hill Bend was a much longer sweeping left, bringing us into an area known as the Kidney Bend, and that would bring us on to the Grand Prix section of the track. That was made a lot tighter from 1976 onwards. During the 1980s and 1990s, there was a chicane formed up at the Sheen Curve, formerly called the Dingledale Corner. And in 2003, we got the current spec of the track we now know it for today. But all of that foundations were laid in the 60s, improved upon in the 70s. It gives this track a very grounded, old school appeal that is so universally adored by drivers across multiple different disciplines. Following through this Grand Prix section, during our talks of that there, we've also seen moves achieved through the Sheen Curve, difficult as they may be. Differences in lines line things up for follow through down at Stirling's. So we'll come to see how all of those get to be used in due course. 2 hours, an hour and a half's worth of racing to follow here at Brands Hatch. Rolling down towards the line then. 27 cars in all, 13 on one side, 14 on the other, as we roll down to the line here from what is the closest top 4 the series has ever seen here in Brands Hatch, former home of the British Grand Prix. Down towards the line here for round 3 of the Shooting Stars Cup by Race Club UK. Without further ado, 90 minutes on the line, and we're green and racing here in Brands Hatch. A brilliant start then by Friedman to try and hold off Van Velzen from the outside. Van Velzen, though, has the momentum to carry up and around the outside, in through the Paddock Hill bend. Almost spun himself out, holds the inside into Druids, and a great start by Cas Van Velzen to take an early lead there up over Will Friedman. Also a brilliant start by Tyler Vermack, holding on to third, side by side between the two Simplay McLarens behind of Clace and McGowan. As we see, it's trouble on the exit of Druids. Multiple cars caught up in the mix there, and we see a huge hit from behind for the 1-2-3. Alastair Cummins turned around on the race start. And with many cars in trouble, we saw it already spilled out for the 28 at the back end of the field. We saw their contact from behind, the 450 colliding with that of Alastair Cummins' 1-2-3. Big trouble indeed. Looking in and around the field, the whole myriad of Fords we have. I want to get a look up towards that top 5 most relevantly to get a look in with some of the fighting here. McGowan now up and ahead of Matthias Clace, but actually, has it withstand? McGowan has dropped down. Has he not there? No, definitely a case there. The Clace has dropped down behind. We can see him there being swamped in by an approaching pack of cars. As things would stand. Still trying to get our bearings on everything, as it's a bit confusing where exactly the positioning of everything is at. Yes, we can see for Clace a lot further down than originally speculated, as Ian Skeen now takes up his chances to fight for 10th. Up in front, 2 Race Club UK cars look to go head-to-head here. Godden versus Bella Machina, down through the Druids. Bella Machina holds his ground over Godden. Meanwhile, number 81 brings the yellow flags out. That'll be for Alonso Amador. Going back into green flag conditions there. Big trouble, though, for the race start for quite a fair few. We see here for James Burns challenging Ian McGowan. A whole swarm of Race Club UK cars down towards the back of that top 10. 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th in all 5 cars in a row as they make their way onto the Grand Prix section. Looking back up towards the leading Race Club UK car, Will Friedman having fallen down to 2nd, leveraging a brilliant start then was Cas Van Velzen to get an early doors lead in that 3-1-4. Leading the charge up and around into the Sheen Curve here. Running out wide, though, it's worth pointing out. Lamborghini definitely a bit frayed around the edges here at Brands Hatch. The Huracan, a very risky pick, but one that Van Velzen was adamant to try out for this round of the championship. Down through to the Clark Curve, still holds his ground over Will Friedman. Tyler Vermack slowly but surely gaining ground on these two. Any kind of incident between the pair will be straight to his benefit. Down through to the Paddock Hill bend. Looking on the outside line here to try and give himself a more aggressive run on the exit of the Paddock Hill bend. Just running out of space there. Will Friedman tucks back in behind Cas Van Velzen. Behind these top 3, we see Ian McGowan in 4th, James Burns in 5th, Chris Leish in 6th, and then we see Roel Hermsen in 7th, Bella Machina 8th, and Godden in 9th. Right by alongside him, though, I will say for 9th place here, around the outside from 10th, is Matthias Clace. Can he wrap this one up for 9th? Absolutely being the case. Up and around the Graham Hill bend. Right behind, we do see here 2 VSR cars lining up to the back end of Godden, Ian Skeen and Kieran Rodd. Up and around into Surtees as we begin our run onto the Grand Prix section once more. Looking up at the front of that field, it is razor thin at this time between Van Velzen and Friedman. Taking a look in with some of the other drivers on the field here, we see with Claes, who's dropped a significant distance down the order. We most recently saw his move back up into 9th place, but he's in a very close pack of cars towards the back of the top 10. Among them, most recently taken a back 4 position there is Ben Godden, who's got quite a fair deal of pressure mounting from behind. Ian Skeen and Kieran Rodd among them. Looking here for Tyler Vermaak, front row seats to the fight in front of him in the 888 McLaren. Will Friedman still looking to put pressure here on Cas Van Velzen. And you consider that Van Velzen and Vermaak, I believe, for this round are both brand new additions to VSR in their lineup. Of course, both of these drivers have competed before in the series on many an occasion, and now join up with the team VSR for this Interleague series to go head-to-head with Race Club UK, Simplay Motorsports and Team ARL. Taking a look then after the first 5 minutes of racing, Van Velzen leads over Friedman with Vermaak in 3rd. McGowan in a very close 4th as James Burns pursues from 5th place. Chris Leish right behind alongside with there Roel Hermsen in 7th. Gregory Bellamacina in 8th place, up and ahead of Matthias Claes. Ben Godden in 10th, with Ian Skeen very close behind him in 11th place. Heading up towards the run of things at Hawthorns. He's on the inside of Godden's McLaren. Dips a wheel there onto the grass. It could be contact between the pair as washed out wide goes the McLaren of Ben Godden. Ian Skeen trying to avoid the walls. He makes contact with the wall and by millimetres avoids hitting Kieran Rodd on the run down through Westfield. A disastrous turn of events there for Ian Skeen. He rejoins just up in front there of Nico Prince, who now gets the jump on him on the run through Sheen Curve. Not the way he was hoping for things to go there. That's going to be a bit of front-end damage for Ian Skeen as he rejoins the field, trying to go around the outside at Sterling's. The Porsche alongside him and a Mustang pressuring from behind. That's Mark Sedgwick in the number 140. Skeen manages to get up ahead of Prince there on the exit of turn 9, but the Porsche will be to the inside on the run in towards the Paddock Hill bend here on lap 4. Very sudden turn of events for Ian Skeen, not one that I'm sure he was expecting to see. We saw him dip one wheel onto the grass and it all came apart from that point onwards down at Hawthorns in his pursuit with Ben Godden. Looking up at the front of the field here, Will Friedman has retaken the lead of this race, much to the chagrin of Cas Van Velzen and Tyler Vermaak. They find themselves tucked in from 2nd and 3rd at the moment, with Race Club UK leading the charge up through to the Pilgrim's Drop. Right behind still plays out in front of our eyes here, a very close battle for 4th. Not to be overshadowed by the three-way split that decides the lead here in the opening 10 minutes. Ian McGowan versus James Burns. McLaren versus Honda. Not a lineup you were expecting to see today, I'm sure. On the run around Sheen Curve, we see here Ford, Lamborghini and McLaren all going head-to-head for a race lead here, courtesy of 3 drivers that need very little introduction if you've been watching for more than a month here on TRTM. Will Friedman, Cas Van Velzen and Tyler Vermaak. Up and around Clark Curve, still very close at hand here, but when we get into the conversation of straight line speed, even in spite of engine restrictions, that Ford is one formidable bit of kit down through turn 1. In towards turn 2. Van Velzen's going to have to think of something and think of it fast, because right now Friedman's got all of the cards here. The 314 is running out of time. Car burns up very easily in the dirty air, and those tyres can get very toasty very quickly, and that leads to a very unstable car by proxy. We see here in a fight for what could very well be 7th, as you see by proxy is also Bellamacina, but locally is for 8th between Roel Hermsen and Matthias Claes. Also worth noting a close fight here, Godden versus Hall versus Leach versus Rodd, as it would appear. Getting a look in here with the fighting from behind, the Simplay Motorsports number 442, Matthias Claes pursuing Roel Hermsen. We'll try and catch on board if we can here with that McLaren, as it is a very curious angle to watch on board with Claes. You see there, dipping one wheel into the grass goes Roel Hermsen with Audi and Race Club UK watching on them with Claes. Currently then in his fight for 8th place on track, making his way down through to turn 9. The McLaren looking poised to charge on the opening straight here on that number 5, but still holding his ground, Roel Hermsen. 10 cylinders against 8 on the run in towards Paddock Hill. Meanwhile, up front, things are looking even closer between Van Velzen and Friedman at the front of the field, between Lamborghini and Ford. Down through Paddock Hill Bend we go with Matthias Claes in towards Druids. Meanwhile, up in front, you can see there what looks to be very likely a fight for position between Chris Leisch and Gregory Bellamacina. A swap over, as it would appear, as the Ferrari goes up and ahead. Claes, though, still sizing his chances to advance on Roel Hermsen. Up and around Surtees. Claes still in pursuit. We'll try to catch on with him in a moment's time. We see here another fight going on. Cheetos versus Davies versus Wright. Two McLarens and a Lamborghini packed in like sardines in towards Surtees we go. Number 28 goes for the inside. Can't find any grounds of it. Cheetos holds his ground. Stays up and ahead. Oh, a car turn around there. That was the BMW. That's Gary Leach. That's been turned around. Yellow flags out. Down through Westfields. The 313 in jeopardy at this time as we take a look in briefly with another angle of that fight for P8. And that's now since been cleaned out to a green flag at this time. Looking in with Van Velzen in the fight for the race lead. You can see how claustrophobically close we are between the leading cars. Very little room between the Lamborghini and the Ford. Both of them have started to carve a pretty unique distance up over that of Tyler Vermaak. Now a second out from the McLaren. You consider how close these three were to one another. It's now filtered out to just the two at the front of this field. Friedman leading that charge then. We'll take a look in after the first 15 minutes, but having a glance in with some more fights, we see the recently injured Gary Leach now taking up the helm of a fight for 17th. Meanwhile, the 442, I believe that is Claes, isn't it? The yellow flags came out for the 442, and yes, our suspicions confirmed, is in and amongst that fight before with Hermsen. It is now a case where Matthias Claes has been washed out of the top 10 in a recent wipeout. You see here with Chris Leisch taking up the helm of 7th place. Roel Hermsen staying in 8th for the time being. A new fight emerges from the, looking here, number 61. So it would appear Kieran Rodd fending off a two-pronged defensive from Ben Godden and Richard Hall of Race Club UK, who still lead in this team's championship by quite a fair distance over Simplay, VSR and ARL. Among the closest fights on track, this is one among them, but still close also is this huge spread of cars here. Skeen looking to put this three abreast, dare I say it, with Lamming and Claes. Three abreast down into Paddock Hill. I don't believe the sight of it, but still holds his ground for at least one position. Lamming nearly spins out. It's one position for Skeen as it is mayhem down through to turn 2. Very nearly contact between the 442 and the 696. Skeen goes for 1. Can he go for 2? Absolutely. Down through to Graham Hill Bend. A brilliant sight there. A storm of steel down through Paddock Hill Bend. And emerging at the front of it all in this fight for 12th place, Ian Skeen. Up and around Surtees we go. Behind him, Claes, Lamming, Prince and Sedgwick in this huge conglomerate of cars just outside of the top 10. Looking into the top 10, we have close fighting again still for Rodd versus Godden down through the run of the Sheen curve, formerly the Dingle Dell corner. Down through to Sterlings. At the front of the field, it has been a sudden change here. Tyler Vermaak goes to second as Van Velzen peels to the pit lane with damage. Of course, with 2 mandatory pit stops to serve, Van Velzen's going to play this one very close to the chest. Any kind of reason to come into the pit lane to start getting strategy to his side is one he's willing to take, and in goes the 314. Leaving his teammate to inherit second place, McGowan to inherit third, Burns to inherit fourth, and Bellamacina to arise to the top 5. Looking in the aftermath of that 3 wide down through Paddock Hill. I mean, that is still unfathomable to see it. Albeit it did filter out to a 2 wide just as we got down through to the hill. But on the run in, it was 3 abreast there. That I am certain. Bellamacina now to 4th as Burns drops down a position to 5th. Race Club UK still comprising the majority of that top 10 as things would stand at this time. They hold 70% of the top 10 positions there, with 1st, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and then 9th and 10th. Leading that charge then, Will Friedman. Vermaak then in 2nd place. McGowan still fighting here with Race Club UK, but now having swapped hands. Burns out of the equation there for that fight to the podium. And in goes Gregory Bellamacina. Into the pit lane also goes 2 more cars. Davies and Sedgwick now in. Following them in, Nico Prince. More and more drivers making their way into the pit lane here. And after the first 15 minutes, so it stands at the moment, Friedman leads the charge over Vermaak in 2nd, McGowan in 3rd with Bellamacina in 4th. Burns in 5th, Leicht 6th, Hermsen 7th. Godden having dropped down a few positions now behind both that of Hall and Rod goes to 10th, so Rod 8th, Hall 9th. Very close at hand, though, in the fight between these two, so we're going to go and catch on board if we can. Meanwhile, yellow flags are out for the 919 in trouble. We see there just on the left-hand side, Bellamacina ran into almost immediate issues down at Sterling's. Now drops in behind Ben Godden. Back in the green flag conditions then. As we get on board with James Burns fighting with his own teammate, Chris Leicht. Well, these two more likely then to work together at this time to try and catch up to Ian McGowan on the podium. See, in the gravel there, out through Westfields, was David Bender in the number 64 Aston Martin. In a spot of bother there. Trying to get a look in with some of the fights on this field. Kieran Rod fighting with Richard Hall and Ben Godden. A 2-pronged defensive then from Race Club UK on VSR for control of 7th. Still trying to flush the last of VSR and Simplay out of that top 10. Still dominating in the series. Race Club UK not going down without a very good fight here. And what is effectively their home race this season. Watching on then with VSR. Courtesy of Kieran Rod, the number 61. Fiercely fending off that 7th place, but you can see how much ground Hall, Godden and Bellamacina are making up, albeit with Bellamacina having dropped considerable positions there following an incident out of the Sheen curve. Likely a case where he's gone out wide and dropped several positions. That's usually what tends to happen down at that section of the track. Out through turn 9 then at the Clark curve. Rod still holding ground. Looking to try and catch on board then with the BMW pursuing him for position on board here with Richard Hall in the attacking angle of this fight. 111 looking on the inside. Rod covers him off there, stays centre mass of the road, but does potentially open himself up off the exit of Druids. No, he's done that very, very well to hold his ground off of Hall. It's area denial that he's looking for here for 7th. Trying to wear out the cars from behind him, knowing they've got the harder job. Richard Hall having to quickly correct a little stab of oversteer there has dropped him a bit more time away from Kieran Rod. And that does pick up on a possible consideration of him fighting amongst his own for 8th. Primarily their objective is on the car in front of them. See though, in his efforts to keep with Kieran Rod, that number 61 is seriously opening up the taps now. Another yellow flag is out at this time. This time for the 999. I believe that's the Jackal towards the back of the field. Running into trouble at this time. And so it is the case there for the Jackal as he rejoins the field. Back into green flag conditions, but there was trouble for him down at Surtees a moment ago there. In terms of the closest fights on track, this is several among them as we see multiple Race Club UK cars piling in to attack the number 61 for 7th on this field. There's also a close fight at hand here amongst Leish and Burns, but these two appear to be working more together to get up towards the 664, 1.2 seconds up the road from them at this time. In this pack of cars comprising the majority of the back of that top 10. Rod still leads over Hall, Benamacina, Godden, and then towards the outside of that top 10, Ian Skeens off by his lonesome. Chris Davies into the pit lane, but 4 laps down, it could very likely be the case that this is a possible DNF in the making. It's worth pointing out, Rod is gaining ground by the bucketful here over Roll Hermsen. It looked like a spot of bother for the number 5 Audi up in 6th place. We've got to catch back on board then with the Ford of Kieran Rod. As it appeared going into the pit lane, yes, was Roll Hermsen. So this upgrades now to the fight of 6th place. Rod playing things very, very well so far. Likely the case then in around 9 minutes time, just under 10 minutes time as it would be, we'll see the majority of those first pit stops come in. We've seen earlier strategies before and we see Benamacina let through by Hall. And this is what's getting Race Club UK this lead of the Interleague Championship here for the Shooting Stars Cup. It's the fact that they are working as a almost collective, working as almost a hive mind here. They're prioritizing each other over anyone else. And it's not a case where you're getting these drivers getting into friendly spars. If they know another driver is faster, they're not going to waste any time going with what layout is most efficient. Moving as a collective. And it's quite a frightening thing to see when you've seen how other teams have performed in the past. As this huge swarm of Race Club UK cars are working so fluently together. It's what's got them such a dominant lead of the championship so far. That and consistent top 10 appearances. Meanwhile, yellow flags out for Claes. The 442 is in jeopardy once more. Getting a look in there, stranded out of Clark Curve, and it looks like critical damage here for Matthias Claes. Disaster for the 442. The only silver lining to which is the fact that he could come into the pits and theoretically not have to come in again because the car will cover about an hour's worth of racing on a full tank. In terms of more on the field action here, McGowan closely pressured from behind here by James Burns. The number 420 Honda still fighting with the 664. What is now the last of the Simplay cars in the top 10. As a matter of fact, the last of the Simplay cars in the top 15. It has been a brutal race then for them. And this could likely lose them out the second place spot to VSR as we head into the last round on May 16th. So among the closest fights of the top 10, we do see big slide out there. It's Roll Hermsen in the gravel. Very nearly spins inward towards the rest of the track. He is unfortunately caught there on the inside line by Chris Leish. Will not be particularly pleased to have him right up in front. Out through Clark Curve, he'll be ushering him out of the way shortly from now. Among the closest fights of the top 10 then, we had for quite a fair deal of time. Was the fighting surrounding Kieran Rod, but he's been able to cut a line away here from Race Club UK in the last couple of laps. There's also been, of course, the close fighting up until recently for McGowan v Burns, but that's now out by 1.3 seconds. That spillover for Leish and Hermsen. Also close fighting here, Wright versus Lamming, so he's furthest up the order of any of the Team ARL cars and looking to advance to 11th. At this time, we've seen into the pit lane goes Bacala in the number 18, the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. Looking in here on the closest fight, still going, of course, Lamming v Wright. Carrying on into the Grand Prix section here at Brands Hatch. We'll go and catch on board with these two as they make their way through. Looking here to catch on board with Wright on his way through to Westfields. Super close as it would stand. Through the Sheen curve, running out wide there, the Ferrari in trouble, and that allows the 540 to sneak on through, through now to turn 8, down at Sterling's. Great move then by Wright up to 11th. Looking here for Van Velsen, that early pit stop. He now finds himself in 17th place on the grid. Of course, that's all going to come back up positive for him by the end of today's outing. You see that the two Astons aren't too far from one another, but they're being lapped up by the rest of the grid at this time. We also see more drivers into the pit lane now as we speak. Balamacina and Cheetos, two Race Club UK cars, now into the pits at this time. We'll see from the leading 208, no current objections to staying out. Friedman continues to lead here onto lap 18 of this race for Mack in second, McGowan in third. We'll see with the pursuing cars behind, Burns and Leish. Will either of them yet consider their odds to come in? No, not this time. For Kieran Rodd, still holds true to 6th place at this time with Team VSR. Great hustle in his opening stint. It does appear to be the case that the majority of drivers will be seeing themselves in when we get to the hour mark of this race, when we have an hour left to go. I should make that a little bit more clear. You see here Leish and Burns still at the back of that top 5, but still close to one another. Slowly but surely chipping away at the gap between themselves and McGowan. Will has been a fantastic signing then for Race Club UK's lineup in this series. A real Hail Mary solution to continue their lead forward. Where they had picked up on leads of the Teams Championship, the one thing they had been searching for over the first half of the championship was an outright win. We see off in the background there, went not Alonso Abenor, sorry, it went David Bacala. Currently 25th, ran out wide there at Westfields, but back on board with Will Friedman. This has absolutely been the signing that they needed. Taking a look through the last couple of race wins in this season, Fate Galaxy and Carlos Dish won both the current races in Italy and Belgium for VSR. They've still yet to see an outright race win then, Race Club UK, and this could be the day where all of that changes, because a driver like Friedman, with the capacity for racing that he has, the pace that he has, and the experience that he has, it's a dumb question on whether they should have signed him or not. This was clearly the best thing for them to do. The 208 proving why that was the best choice they could have made this season. While they still lead the Team's Championship, what really looks good on paper is winning outright in races. It shows not only collective strength, but collective talent as well. And this is not to underplay the performance of other Race Club UK members either. This is a case where this team, again, we've been seeing it throughout this race, is moving as a singular unit, like this sort of well put together machine of various different intricate moving parts. They move over for one another, they shift and they writhe for positions. They go with the sort of layout that is most efficient for team coordination, and they do it on the fly, which is a rare thing to see. That kind of coordination happens behind the scenes. To see it viscerally play out on track is a very unique thing to see indeed. And what it creates at the moment is an efficient lineup, and that gives them the best possible chances to attack for position. As we see here, James Burns is getting closer and closer to Ian McGowan, so we're going to go and catch on board with the, hopefully with a Honda, if we can get on board with him in time for a possible overtake here, trying to catch on with James Burns. V6 against V8, the NSX, a rarely cited car in GT3 here on Assetto Corsa Competizione, now doing battle with one of the most popular cars, the McLaren 720S. You see though, wiggling his way to the inside appears to be Chris Leish. Let's not go and undo all of the things on efficiency I just spoke about, because that would be a very horrible turn of commentator's curse. On board here with the 420. Fighting as it stands for third place. with Ian McGowan of Simplay Motorsports. You can see, though, it's not an easy run of things for that Honda, wrestling the controls on that NSX to make our way up and around Surtees. Through the Pilgrim's Drop, up through Hawthorne Hill, now to Hawthorns. In the pit lane at this time, the 442 of Clace and the 999 of the Jackal. Up and around the Sheen curve, narrowly avoiding David Bacala in this Ferrari 488. Now separated from his comrades. The 420 must act alone here in this fight for third. Alastair Cummins into the pit lane, and I believe also, yes, Will Friedman is in. So too is Tyler Vermack. So I believe also is, yes, James Burns, as Ian McGowan stays out. The 999 has a stop-go for speeding in the pit lane. Chris Leish also into the pits as we see this mass infill of the paddock. Kieran Rodd will stay out, and so too will his pursuers, Ben Godden and Richard Hall. Ian Skeen, now 9th in this race, doesn't yet set his sights upon the pit lane. Wright, currently in 10th. With trouble up in front of him there from some of the Race Club UK McLaren. Will Wright come into the pit lane is the real question. Seeing here with a 540, the answer no at this time. Brett Butler in the 450. Presently then, with Friedman on his way out, Vermack not too far behind as it would stand there. Burns and Leish still yet to make their exit as they'll drop off the jacks in a moment's time here. Friedman's released back onto the circuit. Both he and Vermack emerge ahead of Butler. Burns on his way out. Leish off the jacks there. He's on his way out now also. McMillan and Van Velzen into frame at the moment. And this is an interesting footnote for Van Velzen. Of course, when he came into the pit lane, he had significant damages, as it would appear, on the car. So when he came into the pits, he spent obviously longer in the paddock at this time, getting those repairs sorted on his car before he would make his way back out onto the field. And ultimately, that's lost him quite a few positions here as he emerges behind Burns. So he's at the back of the top 5 against what was a fantastic start, has quickly come undone here. Just as we cross closer to the halfway mark of today's race. We're about, looking here, 13 minutes out from it. This has been a worrying turn of events here for Cas Van Velzen. Into the pit lane goes Ian McGowan. The 442 of Clace still in the paddock. It could very well be the possibility of Clace being out of this race with the damages he had down at Clark Curve. Wright's also coming in now on this lap. See the 208 in the background. Will Friedman now up an extra 2 positions to the top 5 in the 208. Vermack close on his trails there for Brett Butler. The 450 still not yet considering his odds to the pit lane. Nearest under consideration then would be Steve McMillan with Team ARL. We'll see if he chooses to enact on that, as it would be the case here for McMillan. In goes the number 60. It's a tough pit lane entry, and it's very easy to get caught out in this section. Both he and, as it would appear there, also that of Alonso Amador are in. Multiple drivers then in the paddock, majority of which from Team ARL. In fact, if not all of them from Team ARL at this time. As we see here with the 540 of Wright, a driver we not long just saw fighting with Brooklyn Donkin over on the Competizione Performance League World Series, over at the Red Bull Ring. In the background, you can see emerging there, looks to be having a glance. That's the 61 of the lead of this race at the moment, Kieran Rodd, who stayed out for longer, still being pursued here by Ben Godden. So let's go and catch on board. I was going to say let's go and catch on board with them, but as we see here, picking up where they left off, Burns v McGowan still on the table here when it comes to fights. So we'll have to have our sort of head on a stalk here to take a look around all of the various fights on track. We see in the pit lane is Hall and Skeen at this time. Friedman will now move up to 3rd, Vermack up to 4th. Getting a look back in with Burns v McGowan, as we see now Burns has gotten up and ahead of Ian McGowan. Out through the run of the Sheen curve in towards Sterling's. Behind them, Cas Van Velzen still vigorously hunting down a top 3. Currently would find himself strategically at the back of the top 5 as things stand. Hall's on his way out. Skeen about to drop off his jacks, very likely to be the case also. We see up at the front of the field, Kieran Rodd versus Ben Godden, before either of them yet pull the trigger on the chances of their first pit stop. Up through Sheen Curve, 61 versus 95. A lot of information to process in such a short amount of time. 55, just under 56 minutes left to go in this race. Now into the pit lane, both the leading cars, so we won't be seeing any further fighting from these two, as Kieran Rodd and Ben Godden are into the pit lane. That'll leave Will Friedman to go back up into the lead. Vermaak to second. And Brett Butler will be third unless he comes into the pits at this time, which he still has to do twice. James Burns and Ian McGowan, they'll move up to, looking at it here, third and fourth. And in the case of Cas van Velzen, who you can see now has quickly descended upon this fight, as we see trouble there for the Mustang behind them there. That being one of the Race Club UK cars. I believe that's the 140, so that was Mark Sedgwick that had a spot above her there. Very nearly stepped in on that fight between McGowan and Van Velzen, as we'll see here from the point of view of the attacking Lamborghini. Up and around turn one we go. This is for fifth at this time. Running deep, though, into Druids. Things are looking questionable at this time for Cas van Velzen. And his choice of car being Lamborghini, it was definitely a bit of a gamble for him. Has it been one that's paid off? That's up for you to decide. Looking in and around the field to locate some more nearby fights here. There's definitely some considerations among quite a few drivers. Hall versus Rodd, one in consideration. We see in the background Bella Martina lapping out past the Jackal in the 999 Aston Martin. Ian Skeen could very well fight with Chris Leish in a moment's time. We see they're separate by a second as they roll through Hawthorns. We'll follow on board here with Ian Skeen. What could very well be a bit of a curious case. Up through the Sheen Curve, dipping two wheels there on the grass off the exit of the Sheen Curve, but keeps things nice, neat and tidy for the run through Stirlings. Oh, in the background there was an incident. Well, not really in the background. The foreground was an incident between the 140 and the 999, and that invites Ian Skeen to come on through into the top 10 after an incident out of Stirlings between the Jackal and Mark Sedgwick of Team ARL and Race Club UK. Great reactions, though, by Ian Skeen. He was able to come out of that one unscathed and up a position as Chris Leish, I should say, drops to 11th. We are really falling apart at the seams here when it comes to speaking English now. 3 events in today, and I believe if a fourth come around, I'd be finishing it in Klingon at this rate. Watching on board with Richard Hall, pursuing Kieran Rodd, behind him, Gregory Bella Martina. Down through Hawthorns. 52.5 minutes left to go here, so getting closer and closer to that halfway mark here at round 3 of the championship. Kieran Rodd still holding strong then for 7th place. A two-pronged pursuit from Race Club UK behind, looking to challenge for that 7th place spot. We'll stay on board though with Richard Hall in the upcoming fight for 7th. Mark Sedgwick is now into the pit lane as well, following that incident down at Stirlings. You see Hall going very deep on the brakes, down through the Druids. So as we get in well past the first half hour of racing here in round 3 of the Shooting Stars Cup, this is what it currently looks like on the running order. Will Friedman leads over Tyler Vermaak in 2nd, with James Burns in 3rd. Brett Butler in 4th with Ian McGowan in 5th. Cass Van Beltzen down to 6th with Kieran Rodd in 7th. Richard Hall in 8th with Gregory Bellamacina in 9th, and Ian Skeen marks the top 10. Chris Leish in 11th with Roll Hermsen in 12th. Ben Godden 13th with Wright in 14th. Lamming 15th. Bender into the pit lane now from 16th. Lamming in 15th there. We see in the case of Gary Leach now 16th as David Bender continues to fall down through the order. That'll give rise for Konstantinos Chitos to move to 17th place and so on and so forth. Cummins to 18th, McMillan likely then to 19th, Prince to 20th, Bakala to 21st, Amador currently 23rd, Jackal 24th, Sedgwick 25th, and Clace a provisional DNF. One of multiple, if we're to believe correctly. Watching then with Hall as this fight upgrades to 6th. Was in the pit lane a moment ago during this conversation was Brett Butler, a driver who previously held on to a top 3 spot before his entry to the pits. Only 5 minutes then away from the halfway mark of this race. Engaging off of what the strategy has been so far for these drivers, I'd say about 20 minutes out from the next mass influx to the pit lane. Watching a 3-way fight then for 6th. On board with the man in the middle, the 111 of Richard Hall. Behind him, Gregory Bellamacina. Up in front of him, his target, Kieran Rodd. Up and around Hawthorne, onto the Derek Minter straight into Westfields. Here in the Grand Prix section, very tight flowing area of the track. Very old school, very little runoff. And absolutely no room for error. Up and around the Sheen curve, 2 wheels on the grass there for Rodd, but he still holds on through Sterling's as Hall continues pursuit. Actually do see upon the exit there of turn 8, does pick up into a bit more of a stride as Hall drops in behind Bellamacina. You see though, that's definitely come up a bit short for the pair of them. As Bellamacina lags behind that of Kieran Rodd, the two now having dropped nearly 1.5 seconds on their run onto lap 28. So while this efficiency motive by Race Club UK is working and it's giving them the results they need, is that by nature of the fact they have more drivers of a similar bracket for skill, or is it a case where they have fewer opponents of the same bracket of skill? Because what I'm starting to notice here is these strategies, they're great and all, but it's not gaining them the positions. They're usually waiting, as we see there, from one of their own actually, the 140 of Sedgwick, that they're usually waiting for mistakes to give them. So it's consistency, it's a hare and tortoise situation we see from them. As when you put it down to sort of the brass tacks of it all, when it comes to pace, up until recently, their drivers were still, I'd say, sort of middle to back of top 5 material. They were still competitive, and there's nothing to say that they weren't, but up until the signing of Friedman, they'd not seen this kind of leap before in this series. It's been a case where they've been competitive, but numbers have been to their advantage, and consistency over everything. Efficiency has been the driving point of their success in this series. And I'd say it does tell a pretty good story, because it shows that you don't just need pace to win championships, you need consistency. What's pace without it? It's, you know, it's hot lapping at that point. You see there, a bit of trouble though for Hall. Number 140 in trouble. That's Sedgwick again. This could very likely be the nail in the coffin on his performance today. This is down at Hawthorns. We just about to see him emerge over the left-hand side. Back onto the track he goes. The yellow flags subside there into sector 2 and 3. More trouble for the 140. It's been a difficult race for him so far here. Number 5 and number 140 in a spot of bother there. So that was the case for Roll Hermsen and Mark Sedgwick at the same time on 2 separate areas of the track. One on the runoff out of Paddock Hill, the other one on the runoff through the Sheen curve. Watching here with Bellamacina, I think now this is where we're starting to see that efficiency motive materialize, because it was a very slow start to this changeover between himself and Richard Hall. But watching now, as he's got the momentum necessary, if we go to catch on board just quickly though, before that, seeing here Gary Leach versus Konstantinos Chitos down through Paddock Hill. Gary Leach, who was taken out very early in this race. That's why he finds himself in a 17th place spot. So looking to go and catch on in with the Ferrari currently in pursuit then of Kieran Rodd. We do just see here with Cas van Velzen lapping his way through the traffic in front. So now we see, it took a bit of a moment there. As if it's not already obvious, the brain fog is starting to descend here. We see problems for Nico Prince just before we get into that conversation. So looking here for the number 10. He ran out wide down at Graham Hill Bend. Now finds himself stranded as he rejoins the field. He's back into green flag conditions then as we follow on board with Bella Macina. So it was, as mentioned before, a bit of a slow start to things when he got swapped over between himself and Hall. And that's what left many a doubt over whether or not this efficiency sort of priority was working out to actually gain positions, or if it was a case by having more people than opponents inside of that top 10. It was just area denial from the start. No, I think we're starting to see now the case here. The drivers do have the pace to challenge, but it's not easy when you're having to shift that between not only your own pace, but also caring for your other sort of teammates' pace, working around that. Up and around the Clark curve, we hit the halfway mark of the race. So taking a look at where we find ourselves at the moment, just trailing away from the fight for 6th place. We see Will Friedman leading in this race then for Race Club UK on one of their latest signings to their lineup. Tyler Vermack in 2nd place with James Burns in 3rd. Ian McGowan in 4th with Cas van Velzen in 5th. Kieran Rodd in 6th, still defending away from this two-pronged defensive. Now, Hall's given it a try. Now Bella Macina, will either of them come up with a result here? That's definitely up in the air. Or will they come up short against what has been a stonewall defence by Kieran Rodd? Richard Hall in 8th, Ian Skeen in 9th, and Chris Leitch in 10th. Ben Godden in 11th, with Wright in 12th. Lamming 13th, Butler 14th, Cheetos 15th, Leach 16th, Cummins 17th, McMillan 18th, Prince 19th, and Hermson in 20th. Bender in 21st, Bacala in 22nd, Amador in 23rd, Jackal 24th, Sedgwick in 25th, Clace a DNF as it would appear, still in the pit lane now, some 17 laps down following critical damages down at turn 9. Heading up through the Sheen curve, there's a yellow flag out in front. It's the 1-2-3, and there's been a big incident there for Alastair Cummins with Simplay, who found himself stranded sideways. It's a miracle the drivers got through with no incident there as they were coming through at a very fast rate of knots. We see running out wide to allow them on through Steve McMillan. That has allowed for Kieran Rodd to form more of a distance here off of Gregory Bella Macina. Meanwhile, Richard Hall still trying to gain ground here, but he's bleeding time away from the 919 of Bella Macina. Down through the run of things here at the Graham Hill Bend. 43 minutes left to go here in Brands Hatch. And scouring the rest of the field here to see where other nearby fights may be coming from. With a majority of fights starting to fizzle out, we do yet see one emerge here for Cheetos v Butler. About a second out with Gary Leach a second behind, so there is that much to consider at this time. Of course, there's been one of the main fights going on for some time here, has been between that of Rodd and Bella Macina, but joining the fray there is Cas van Velzen, very quickly involved into this fight. I don't believe he was intending upon any of that, as he does find himself now in 6th place, having dropped behind his teammate as we make our way down through the run of things at turn 9. Kieran Rodd now to 5th with Gregory Bella Macina currently 7th, still pursuing. Now the Lamborghini over the Ford on the run down through to turn 1. Watching them for this fight of 5th place. Van Velzen looking to recuperate on his losses here. Out through turn 3. Heading up through Surtees onto the Grand Prix section now with Bella Macina in tow. So glancing here at one of the closest battles on track with the most number of drivers involved, 3 in total for the time being. 4 when you consider Richard Hall as well, but in terms of immediate action here, it would be 3 between the 61, the 314 and the 919. Out through the Sheen curve. Van Velzen still pursuing Rod. Della Macina still holding on as well. Admirable attack here from the 919. On the exit of Sterling's, though, is going to bleed more time, so it becomes a 2-horse race for 5th between teammates here. Team VSR's Van Velzen and Rod. Drivers who have, I believe, shared a seat before over at Euro Titans. These two understand each other very, very well, so I imagine little trouble to emerge in their pursuits of 5th. Also see tucked in behind at this time, Della Macina, soon to be engaged here by his own teammate, Richard Hall. It's about 7/10 out and closing. We see they're running out wide down at the Graham Hill bend, the 111. Caught, I should say, a tiny bit of the grass. That allows Ian Skeen to scoot on through there to 8th place as we make our way through Surtees. Behind is Chris Leish in 10th place with Race Club UK. Heading up and around the Sheen curve. Ford versus Lamborghini for 5th place at this time, but as we're probably likely to see then in the case of Hall and Leish, nothing too intense. Of course, this is among teammates and they're still gunning for positions on the grid, so VSR still doing well and will likely be able to outscore Simplay and get back up to 2nd for the run in towards the last round of the championship at Bathurst later on next month. Down through the Paddock Hill bend. Seeing here in the aftermath of the fighting for Skeen v Hall. Skeen continuing to open ground there, but he has lost about 1/10 in the opening sector, from 8/10 of a gap to 7 as we cross out through the run of things here at Surtees. Skeen in the 696 continuing his charge forward. Meanwhile, for Rod v Van Velzen, nothing really of substance to provide at the moment. Neither of these two looking to pressure each other for position, knowing it's been a bit of a tough drive so far, so they need the positions and need not worry about much else. Coming up on the last half hour of racing. Now, we also have there a fight that will likely get a lot more brazen than the other two are focused at the moment, as we catch on board to see with the McLaren. If we can go and locate one at this time. Taking a look to locate the McLaren of Konstantinos Chitos. It is pursuit of Gary Leach. Now we see emerging alongside them there was what looks to be, yes, the 123 Alastair Cummins, who emerges from the pit lane still with damages, rather peculiarly. The run down through to Druids. You see Kieran Rod having a lap past all of these drivers on screen at the moment. In just a moment's time, he's still 5th in this race. 37.5 minutes left to go. We'll stay on board with Chitos in his fight for 15th. We'll leave you on board with Chitos and we'll be back to you in just a moment's time. And so cutting away from Cheetos after losing more time away. Now with the Mustang of Kieran Rod stepping into frame, we just check on in here with some of the drivers towards the front of the field, on with Tyler Vermack in second place. 15 seconds off the lead of this race, though. Still leading is the 208 of Will Friedman. Now we expect in the next 5.5 minutes roughly is where we'll see a lot more drivers coming back into the pit lane. We see here for James Burns, very wide run of things at Sterling's. Doesn't look to be given any grief here from his teammate. Sedgwick shoves out of the way to give easy leeway of turn 9 here at the Clark curve for the Honda. It's a rare thing indeed, this NSX. I cannot stop for the life of me gawking over this machine because it is just unfathomable to see. You never get the opportunity in the majority of championships to get to see an NSX, let alone one fighting on the podium of that series. It is a remarkable thing indeed. See for Roll Hermsen, also in a fairly rare pick, the Audi R8, last of the V10s, along with the Huracan. Speaking of, we see here with Wright on his way down through Paddock Hill, currently 11th in this race. Ben Godden in 10th, about 3.3 seconds up the road from him. You also see for Cas van Velzen, having taken his last of his pit stops here. A curious case then for the 314. Meanwhile, we've also seen the last of the pit stops for Hermsen, Prince, Alastair Cummins, Alonso Amador, and Mark Sedgwick. With Vermack and Friedman yet to have considered their odds for a run into their last pit stop of today. We'll check to see here with James Burns if he'll be next in line to visit the paddock. Making his way down through turn 9, not this time around, so we'll wait to see here from McGowan, neither the case. You also see here for Rod, same story. For Bellamacina, all the same. For Skeen, exactly dead on the same. He's up ahead of Richard Hall at the moment. We see these two are getting far closer than when we last caught on with them. Meanwhile, for Van Velzen, we just saw him there, catching back on with the 314, going very slow down through Druids. A very curious case as to what on earth is going on for him at this time. Let's go and catch on board, though, with the war of the BMWs here between Hall and Skeen. Meanwhile, we did also just get a glimpse at a fight, albeit for position, but between two drivers who have already separated themselves on strategy. So staying on board with Hall in his newfound pursuits of 7th against Ian Skeen with Team VSR. With traffic in front, courtesy of the 140, this could throw a wrench into the works. Meanwhile, about 1.9 seconds up in front is Bellamacina. Down through to Sterling's. As of right now, only one driver into the pit lane. Now that makes two. Richard Hall's coming in the 111. As we get closer and closer to the last half hour of racing, that'll be the third of the thirds of racing. We'll check in behind here from the 95. Ben Godden doesn't come into the pit lane neither, so it appears does that of Wright. The case here of Lamming, too far off to call it in advance. We see right behind him at this time is the BMW of having a glance in there. That's with Simplay, so I believe having a glance that, yes, that is Gary Leach. Down through to Sterling's. One thing that Brands Hatch has been able to do over the course of today's race is really scramble the field up. Now, this is often the double-edged sword that is the smaller circuits like Brands Hatch, and also another popular small circuit in this game, the Circuit Zolder. It's a case where we can get some really frantic fighting in the start of the race, but under strategy, especially on the longer races at these circuits, it quickly blends the circuit up to where we have multiple drivers on separate lengths of the race, sort of off in their own world almost, as it would seem. Catching on here with Ian Skeen. After troubles in front for Gregory Bellamacina, there could be the opportunity, Never mind. Going into the pit lane. Almost as I opened my mouth to speak there, the Ferrari peels into the pits. I was about to say there could be the opportunity for him to fight for 6th. No, not this time around, so it would appear. Ian Skeen then to 6th. I must say it's been a very admirable drive so far then for Skeen over the course of this race. Up in front, his teammate Kieran Rodd fighting to keep ahead of the attempting to unlap Porsche of Nico Prince. Meanwhile, the 314 is in trouble. That's Cas van Velzen. A sudden turn of events, then Van Velzen in serious trouble. Let's go to catch on with the 314. Disaster has struck here for Cas van Velzen, and I can't make head nor tail of where he's supposed to be on track. Where on earth is he? This is a great question. His foot's planted in the throttle. We can see he's there in the runoff, actually, so it would appear, of the Graham Hill bend, I believe. We've seen this issue before, and there goes Van Velzen, sadly out of this race. But I think we've seen that issue before from him, where his throttle has been stuck open. The car has plummeted to the wall at a fast rate of knots there, like a cruise missile, just slams the wall off the exit of turn 3. There's absolutely nothing he could have done in that situation to avoid what ended up happening for him there. That's hardware failure. And the 420, not 420, sorry, a very common Freudian slip. The 420 in this race is James Burns. He's into the pit lane. The 314 is into the pit, not into the pit lane again. If it's at all obvious, with 3 races in today, and I'm starting to slowly, that's a lie, quickly lose my mind, then there's your evidence there. James Burns into the pit lane. The 314 is out of this race. Burns is in, and so too is a great myriad of drivers. Leish in the pit lane at the moment. Lamming also. We see out of David Bender into the pit lane. We see dropping off the Jackson, leaving there Nick Lamming. Still leading the charge then Will Friedman. We'll see from the case here out of Tyler Vermaak. Will he be making that choice to come into the pit lane here? With just under 30 minutes left to go in this race. We'll see from the 888 down through the Clark curve we go. It's hugging the inside line, so that's a telltale sign. In he goes then to the pit lane. Following in his midst there, not far from now, Ian McGowan. Another McLaren inside of that top 3. Simplay Motorsports is furthest up the field. They're the last of their top 10s. There is a silver lining for them, though, as Gary Leach has brought it now to have 2 Simplay cars within the top 15. As the 313 marks 15th place at the moment. We do see very close for a moment there was between Leish and Bella Macina. That was at the last interval, so it showed a very close exit between the pair as Vermaak is in. McGowan stays out. Rodd stays out also. Same story for Skeen. Ben Godden would be next in the considerations for a pit lane run here. And then following in his midst, about 5.2 seconds down the road, will be that of Wright with Team ARL. Godden stays out. Wright on his run down through Clark Curve. Also elects to stay out there with Lamborghini. Next in considerations would be Butler, but he seems to have made his decision already as he's already down through Graham Hill Bend down at turn 3. Friedman now coming into the pits. We see the 208 leading car then for Race Club UK into the pit lane. McGowan next in line on considerations. He's down at the moment on the run through Hawthorns on his run through the Derek Minter Straight, so we'll catch on with him a little later on. In terms of nearby fights, Konstantinos Chitos versus Nico Prince. We see there the Porsche pursuing from behind. Team ARL's number 10 up against Race Club UK's number 44. We'll see then from the top 5 what are the next considerations here, as Friedman is still in the pits as McGowan elects to stay out. Kieran Rodd in the number 61 will also stay out, and so too will Ian Skeen. Ben Godden, currently on his way down through the run of things at the Sheen Curve, will be next in line on considerations as we see side-by-side action there between the Audi of Roel Hermsen and, as it would appear to be, one of the Ferraris there from Team ARL. I believe that, yes, is the number 81 of Alonso Amador. Godden stays out. As for Wright, the 540's coming in. Into the pit lane goes the Lamborghini. So Vermaak shifts up to 6th. Still in line to return to the podium by the end of this race, but Will Friedman re-emerges to the field 4th overall in this race, still with 3 cars in front of him, expected to pit soon. 25 minutes left to go here in round 3 of the Shooting Stars Cup by Race Club UK. You see there from Ian McGowan staying out. Kieran Rodd, and as it would appear as well, Ian Skeen, both into the pit lane. So Will Friedman to shove up to 2nd place now. And Ben Godden next expected into the pit lane. We'll see though for Friedman now back up to 2nd. Getting a look back in with the fights we were looking at before was Cheetos v Prince. You see here in the case of the 44 versus the 10 after a recent issue for him there down at Paddock Hill. Prince dropped a bit of distance there off of Konstantinos Cheetos. It's worth noting the last time we saw these two was the other way around, with Cheetos leading and Prince pursuing in their fight currently for 16th on the field. Rodd on his way out. We see Skeen rolling alongside him there. Very quick stop from VSR to get their cars back out onto the track here. We see emerging alongside them is Gregory Bellamacina. We see there Kieran Rodd leaps for it. It's contact down at Paddock Hill as rejoining the track with a vengeance there. Kieran Rodd slams Gregory Bellamacina down through turn 1. A huge knock between the pair. Watch this. Big hit there. Where originally, and I didn't want to say at the time, originally it looked like he jumped over the pit exit lines to try and cover him off. No, he was totally within the lines all the way until the exit there. It's as we get down into Paddock Hill. It's just wrong place, wrong time. Very difficult decision there. And Gregory Bellamacina drops in behind Ian Skeen. And now right onto the nose of his teammate, that being Richard Hall in 9th place. Most recent of action then upon that rapid exit from Kieran Rodd ultimately resulted in side-by-side contact. It was a collision course already set in stone from the moment he got off the limiter. There was very little at that time, given the amount of time it took to go from leaving the pits to getting into trouble, that he could have done during that time to stop it. Ben Godden in the pit lane, leaving just Ian McGowan and Brett Butler as our last 2 drivers yet to have taken their pit stops in this race, or the last of their pit stops more relevantly. Down through Westfields, in through the Dingledale up to Sheen curve, then Ian McGowan, 46 laps strong. With only 1 pit stop currently done, another still to serve, 22.5 minutes left to go here in Brands Hatch. Into the pit lane then goes Ian McGowan, leaving Will Friedman to inherit the lead once more. 22 minutes then from the checkered flag. Will Friedman could very likely continue the winning streak for Ford as a manufacturer, but more relevantly for Race Club UK, giving them their first outright win on track. Despite leading this championship in the teams where it matters to them the most, they've still yet to see the first of their race wins come up, as the last 2 races have been dominated by VSR courtesy of Fade Galaxy and Carlos Dish over the course of rounds 1 and 2. Where VSR brought their A game once again for today, it couldn't stand up against the new signing for Race Club UK's lineup of Will Friedman in the 208, who has absolutely dominated this field, the commander of Brands Hatch, as it were here, the 208, I should say, of Will Friedman. But McGowan, he emerges just up in front there of James Burns, right up alongside Alonso Amador, who now drops down past the 420, opening up the gap between himself and the 664. We are likely then to see, for the trailing 21 minutes of racing, some lively battling between the 420 and the 664. Also tucked in behind then is Skeen versus Bellamacina. Up in front of him, Kieran Rodd. So it's a defensive job here for the 696 BMW to hold up the 919 and keep his teammate in the top 5. Looking to catch on board then with some of the fighting here with Bella Martina and Skeen for 6th place. Whole cloud of dust there kicked up into their eyes after 2 wheels went onto the grass for the car in front, that being the 61 of Kieran Rodd. Up and around the Sheen curve, the Ferrari's got more rotation over the BMW, and the Ford, a big snap there by Skeen, but he's held that wonderfully down through to Sterling's, but it's contact from behind and muscled out. Ian Skeen spins around, pirouettes into the wall after contact from Bella Martina. We saw there the stab. He was definitely down on the brakes. You can see that's the point where Bella Martina starts accelerating into the back end of Skeen's car. I'm not quite sure that's on, really. In the case of this contact, that leads to Skeen pirouetting out. And taking up helm of position goes Bella Martina and Hall. Kieran Rodd, now separate from his teammate, is left out by his lonesome. 8 tenths in front of the 919 Ferrari, a marked man for VSR after his move against Ian Skeen out of Sterling's. Number 18 brought out the yellow flags temporarily down at the Sheen curve, but that's since sorted itself out. You see here for Ian Skeen has now been backed up onto Chris Leish, down in 8th place and 9th place respectively. 19 minutes left to go here in Brands. Down through Sterling's. We're on the last lap. He was spun out by Bella Martina. Taking a look then around the order, 18.5 minutes left to go here in Brands Hatch. Will Friedman leads over Tyler Vermack with Ian McGowan in a close 3rd in his fight currently with James Burns in 3rd and 4th respectively. Behind him, Kieran Rodd looking to be intercepted by Gregory Bella Martina. We see that the gap in the last interval showed 1.2 seconds, so a hopeful sign here for the 61 continuing to hold on to the last of the top 5 positions. Richard Hall in 7th place, up and ahead of Ian Skeen, very close to that of Chris Leish. In between the pair of them, Alonso Amador with Team ARL Ferrari. And the exit of the Graham Hill bend. Skeen and Leish 8th and 9th. Ben Godden in 10th. Wright in 11th. Hermson 12th. Lamming 13th. We see here for Leach in 14th. Butler 15th. Prince in 16th. Cheetos 17th. McMillan 18th. Cummins 19th. Amador in 20th. Bender 21st. Bacala 22nd. Jackal 23rd. And Sedgwick in 24th. See, right behind Sedgwick at this time is Ian McGowan, frustrated by the fact that he's got the 140 up over his nose here with the 420 biting at his heels for position. So we'll go on board if we can here with Ian McGowan, who's in a very, very close fight. Furthest one up the field of any driver at this time. And this is for 3rd place, last of the podium positions and the last of the top 10s at the moment of any of the Simplay drivers. "17 minutes left to go down through Druids. Up in front, a whole wad of traffic. Jackal, Cummins and Lamming all in front there from Simplay, Team ARL and Race Club UK. Up and around Surtees, so the Jackal giving space there for the run in towards the Pilgrims Drop as we enter the Grand Prix section. McGowan continues his pursuits up in 3rd place for the time being. James Burns very close behind, so we'll go to catch on board with the Honda if we can in his continued pursuits. Meanwhile, Mark Sedgwick finds himself in another yellow flag situation out through Surtees. We see in his efforts to get up and around the 123 there of Alastair Cummins, very nearly getting himself onto the grass was Ian McGowan. Staying on board then with the Race Club UK Honda of James Burns as he continues his pursuits of 3rd place. Up and around the Clark curve. Heading back onto the opening straight then. Brabham Straight as it's known. Down through to Paddock Hill Bend. McLaren holding ample ground there for third place, 6/10 up before we get onto the brakes down into Druids. See in the background there, Kieran Rodd, only 2 seconds away. So there is the chances for VSR to still claim upon another podium position here. Tyler Vermaak, their only podium sitter as it remains then in the 888. It is definitely worth the conversation here. Kieran Rodd, 1.9 seconds out, is slowly but surely, and with plenty enough time to put himself in attacking range, chipping into this fight amongst the top 3, as it would appear, or the top 4 more relevantly, for third. Through to Sterling's 0.8 now, 0.9 of a second now, just drops in north of a second for but a moment there between McGowan and Burns. Will catch on with them a little later on here as their fight starts to dissipate for the time being. Taking a look around the field to see where the other nearby fights may be emerging from. Skeen versus Leish, as we see here from the 74's point of view, in his pursuits of 8th place. Watching on board here, Chris Leish firmly in and amongst that fight of 8th place with Ian Skeen as we head down through to Paddock Hill Bend. Traffic in front courtesy of the Jackal and Alastair Cummins. Going up and around Druids then, we see once again great sportsmanship from the 999. He's been very courteous over the course of this race, knowing when to give the position over, knowing when is the best time to hop out of the racing line, and so far has kept himself clear of trouble throughout today's race in the 999. Driver we've seen before as well, claim on victories over on the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Won not too long ago in that series in Division. Much like we've seen in the fighting there for third, the fighting for 8th starts to wilt as we get into the last 13 minutes of racing. Hall versus Bellamacina, not necessarily going to be considered much in the same strength as some of these other fights, as it is, of course, among teammates. And we've seen these two are already flexible in their approach to things. They will swap over when the time calls upon for it. So it's unlikely that they'll be sparring for the rest of this race all of a sudden, given what's at stake for them at this time. We see here for Ian Skeen, this will be relevantly what's worth considering in part of that fight. If he gets involved in and amongst that fight for 6th place between Bellamacina and Hall, that will be something to keep some close eye on, because of course they're not going to be just letting him through. Of course they will be fighting with him for position, and it's going to be a case where he's outnumbered. He's got Race Club UK cars in front of him and behind, as it would stand. It's not going to be particularly easy, but he has proven already he has the pace for it. Now what he needs is the consistency. He's had a rough race, of course, was turned around by Bellamacina, who you can now see is getting up and around Nick Lamming along with Richard Hall. You see there amongst this pack of cars, Richard Hall behind him, Nick Lamming up in front, Gregory Bellamacina. Seeing here with what's left of the fight between McGowan and Burns, 0.9 of a second here. McGowan has had remarkable pace throughout today's race here. Up and around the Sheen curve, the Honda still in pursuit of the McLaren, but that time is quickly wilting away. 11 minutes, just under 12 left to go here in round 3 of the championship. You see here, still close between the two Race Club UK cars. There will be that internal dialogue over whether or not they swap positions once again. They did so before in the sake of efficiency of position. The two teammates working very well together as it would stand, but with Skeen now pressuring from behind, it does present a new set of questions for them. And taking a look further down the order to see another fight still going on here as Konstantinos Chitos versus Nico Prince. This is for 16th between the ARL Porsche and the Race Club UK McLaren. Number 10 versus number 44, still going on after all this time. Remarkable to think of in that sense. You see here from Chris Leish, he's got Ian Skeen in his sights here, and down through the Pilgrim's Drop up to Hawthorne Hill. He's slowly but surely getting that distance back here. And I think we are about to see somewhat of a concertina effect come into a full crunch by the end of this race, as we see Skeen really doesn't show too much of a sign of slowing down here in his pursuits of Hall. Leish neither in his pursuits of Ian Skeen. We see there with trouble up in front. Hall now gets up and around Bella Machina, down through to Sterlings. So this is going to get rather curious now. Skeen pressed right up to the back end of Gregory Bella Machina. Let's go to catch on board here with the number 696, who hasn't been quick to forget what happened down at Sterlings. We'll see though, he's being blocked off by Bella Machina. And heading down through to Paddock Hill, the mounting frustration here of the 696. Normally very level-headed on this grid. Skeen is really being tested on his patience now by Gregory Bella Machina in the fight for 7th. Likely a case where he'll be lodging in a complaint with race control, as he now runs onto the grass there, running out wide. That was frustrating to watch, as a matter of fact, because I'm not quite sure what Bella Machina was doing with that. That was, I think, after one too many moves, that was the case. He was just swerving to cover off the 696. It's a miracle, given how close the two were, that he didn't get spun out. Given the fact that not long ago did he turn around the 696 down at Sterlings. He's really walking on thin ice there. If that was a touring car race, they would have slaughtered him for something like that. So it's a curious case that he's been able to get away with that this time around. Watching still then with Ian Skeen, as we drop into the last 9 minutes, now 8.5 of this race. And he's going to be seeing red with those two in front of him for the rest of this race. And I'd say with every reason to. They've really sort of played him about like that over the course of the last lap there. Of course, that incident where he went off at turn 3 is his own. That's no one's fault besides his. He dipped a wheel onto the grass and the car came away. But I'm not quite sure what that blocking was all about, because that didn't really look like proper defense. It kind of just looked like moving into his way, hoping you didn't get spun. You see here for Richard Hall, now holding on to 6th place, up and ahead of his teammate. 8 minutes left to go then here in Brands Hatch. And Friedman still leads over Vermack. McGowan still holds 3rd, and now having put even more distance up over James Burns. It's a case where Kieran Rodd is coming to take a bite out of that 420. Down through to Westfields on the run up to the Sheen Curve. A newfound fight then for 4th place has emerged. Let's go and catch on board then with the number 61 Ford. Looking to catch in then with Kieran Rodd in his pursuits over the Honda of James Burns. On board with Rodd. Up and around the Clark curve. Not the kind of lineup you expect to see every day. Honda versus Ford. I mean, it was already bizarre enough when it was Honda versus McLaren, but this is certainly quite something to behold. On the run down through to the Paddock Hill bend, up to Druids. Kieran Rodd has definitely got a chance here to seize 4th place off of James Burns. 7 minutes left to go here. Looking in and around the ballpark of 5 more laps, as according to the position of the race leader, Will Friedman, in the 208. Heading up and around Surtees. Looking in here with Steve McMillan in front, having moved over to the side of the road to allow these two on through, up through the Sheen Curve. It's a bit more of a shallow run than Rodd would have liked, and that does snip away a little bit of the momentum he was carrying all throughout that middle sector. Into the last sector we go, then up through Sterlings, still in his pursuit. 6 minutes left to go. Meanwhile, it's worth pointing this out. The 664 is really not too far away at all anymore here. You can see up the road towards the end of the opening straight here on the Brabham straight on the run down through Paddock Hill now. That faint glimmer of black and purple. Off in the distance is the 664. That's Ian McGowan on the last of the podium positions. So we have 3 teams squabbling for the last of those podiums here in Brands. Simplay hold on to it, with Race Club and VSR pursuing from behind. Looking onto the rest of the field here as we drop into the last 5 minutes of racing. Still close at hand in fights between Leish and Skeen. On the exit of the Graham Hill bend, we see up in front Bellamacina versus Hall, a likely consideration, but will they move over once again to allow each other on through? You see then in the case here, they're very close to one another, and from behind the BMW in hot pursuit then of the Mustang. Leish having to defend away 8th place for his teammates up in front. Up and around Hawthorns, heading in towards Westfield on the Derek Minter straight. Down through Westfield, you can see very aggressive run of things now by Ian Skeen. He's properly got his elbows out. Not happy whatsoever, but he's channeling a lot of that into this drive. Up and around the Sheen curve we go. The Mustang still up over his nose. A bit of a stab of oversteer there, but Skeen right on the ragged edge of what his machine dare give him. Down through Sterling's. Has got the run of things here up over Chris Leish. Leish will likely have to hold the inside down towards Clark. Goes back onto the racing line. Down through turn 9. The 696 right on his trails. Heading up and around onto the Brabham straight. Starting lap 59 here. 4 minutes left to go in Brands Hatch, and things have kicked off into full-scale warfare between VSR and Race Club UK. We see a stab of oversteer there off the exit of the Paddock Hill bend for Ian Skeen. Meanwhile, up in front, the topic of the 2 Race Club UK cars, 6th and 7th at this time, Hall and Bellamacina. Still close to one another. Their teammate not too far off their chances. That's Chris Leish, still being hounded for 8th by Ian Skeen. Kieran Rodd still in pursuit to James Burns, but that gap has noticeably dropped away to 0.8 of a second. Up through Hawthorns we go here on lap 60. Up and around Westfields. Actually, sorry, it's lap 59 still for these drivers. Will Friedman is on lap 60. So too is Vermack. McGowan, Burns and Rodd, they're all on lap 59. So it really goes to show how far up the order that leading duo are. 3 minutes left to go. Meanwhile, other close-by fights here. Catching back on board with Leish and Skeen. Skeen's got the opportunity side by side, held up by one of the ARL Mustangs there. Chris Leish boxed in, makes contact out through the Clark curve. Leish down to 9th place, Skeen up to 8th. Nothing stands in between himself now and Gregory Bellamacina. These two already with a bit of a controversial time in the sun here in Brands Hatch. And I don't think their story is quite yet over. Kieran Rodd still pursuing James Burns for position here in and amongst the top 5. Still hunting down 4th place off of the Honda. It's been a brilliant matchup between the pair of them over the course of the latter half of this race, and I still think the majority of our stories yet have an ending here. So we see closing in, and closing in fast, mind you, is Ian Skeen over Hall and Bellamacina from 6th and 7th. Ben Godden in the top 10 at the moment then. Comfy position for the 95. Behind him, I believe there is Sedgwick. No, that is not the case. That is having a glance in here. Who would that be then at this time? Was that... It's not Leish, because Leish is much further up the road. Begs the question, who is that? Oh, it's the leader. That's how far up the road Friedman is. Oh my goodness. He's lapping the cars in 10th. This man has dominated the field today. And as we see there, trouble for the number 10. That is Nico Prince. Was it not? No, I really need to get my eyes checked. Oh my God, no. That was the 18. Being Ricardo. Wishful Winnings in chat asking what happened to Cas van Veltzen. Hardware failure by the looks of things. And he's been forced to retire from today's race. Unfortunately so. When we discovered him, the 314 had been planted in at the tyre wall off the exit of turn 3 with his throttle pinned all the way open. So my assumptions, considering that it's not likely a case where he's crashed and passed out, it's more a case where his throttle's been stuck open and his hardware's gone. This has happened to him before. I think a long time ago in a fated series known as the NLRL Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship, did much the same happen here for Van Velzen in the past. Not ideal, of course, not ideal. So we heard a moment ago as well that Will Friedman is on his last lap. We see him down through Hawthorns at this time for the last time in Brands Hatch. We see up in the background, though, looks to be trouble here with Race Club UK, and off into the wall. Will Friedman in the gravel down at Westfields. This could open up the doors here for Tyler Vermaak if Friedman cannot get going soon. A very tough turn of events here for the 208. Nearly done in by his own teammates down at Westfields. Tail between the legs there for this last lap. Definitely too close for comfort now for the 208. The 888 was not too far behind during that incident. Fated, I would have said there from Wishful Winnings. Down to the line, though, regardless of the correction there on grammar. Down to the line goes Will Friedman to take the checkered flag on what has been a far too close for comfort finish for him there after trouble on that last lap. Will Friedman wins in Brands Hatch. Ford continue their unstoppable winning streak, but Race Club UK collect on their first race win of the season. After back-to-back wins in the last 2 rounds before from VSR, Race Club UK take an outright win here in Brands. Vermaak on an admirable drive there to make second. McGowan still clings to his chances on third. In the number 664, behind him is James Burns and Kieran Rodd. But I am curious to see what is the case here for the fight for Skeen versus Bella Macina. You can see the distance is palpable now between the pair of them. Only a few car lengths. McGowan to see the checkered flag here for third in this race. Brilliant performance from the 664. Simplay had a rough day here in this and unlikely to lose out that second to VSR. The silver lining, though, they've got a car on the podium and it's Ian McGowan who delivers it. Across the line a moment ago then went Burns and Rodd, separate by less than half a second. Hauled to the line, Bella Macina behind him with Skeen in 8th place. Behind him, Chris Leish, Ben Godden to make the top 10. It's been a tough day for many here at Brands Hatch, a track that is old school in its design and brutal in its opportunities for runoffs. This is a track that giveth and taketh away. Not many can hack it. Down to the line, Godden for 10th. So taking a look at the full results then, Will Friedman on his first drive for Race Club UK wins for the team here in Brands Hatch. Tyler Vermaak in second with McGowan third, Burns fourth, Rodd fifth, Hall sixth, Bella Macina 7th, Skeen 8th, Leish 9th, and Godden in 10th. Wright in 11th, Hermson in 12th, Lamming in 13th, Butler 14th, Prince in 15th, Cheetos in 16th, Leach in 17th, McMillan 18th, Cummins 19th, Amador in 20th, Bacala in 21st, Jackal 22nd, Bender 23rd, and Cedric in 24th. 3 DNFs then from Van Velzen, Claes, and Davies in this race today, with the most recent of which being that 314 that suffered catastrophic hardware failure. His throttle pinned open down at turn 3 and was out of the race after a huge hit against the wall. We saw things get a little too close for comfort there on that last lap for Will Friedman. One that I'm sure he'll be very quick to remember. But what a round that's proven to be. The next round coming up then in this series will be on May 16th. We head to the infamous Mount Panorama Circuit in Bathurst, New South Wales, Australia, for the final round of the Shooting Stars Cup by Race Club UK. That's all from us here on TRTN. If you're catching us tomorrow at 6:30 PM BST, we'll be back live for coverage of the NLRL Sunday League Season 5, powered by Malwar Transport and live exclusively on TRTN. Otherwise, that's the end of broadcasting for today here on Saturday the 18th. We've had 3 races covered over the course of today, if it wasn't obvious by how much fatigue we've had coming in to this one here, struggling to speak English at the end of all of that one. But covering rounds from HCCL, Competizione Performance League, and now today with the folks over at Race Club UK, courtesy of the Shooting Stars Cup, a wonderful charity race series we've had so far. And here's to the last round coming up around the corner then, May 16th. Set that on your calendars, same time as today. We'll see you then. That's all from us here on TRTN. Take care and good night.